that would be not a desired rule. And also, travelers any public good. The actual idea we now intend to reach, inconsistent, incoherent regulatory program, and that not only perturbs the regulatory community, but in some cases, the consequence could be aggravated with the lack of information. The regulators may not be competent in their resources around us. Assume you are now managing some business operations, and which is small, and now interact with a small business association, which is perhaps available both in South Korea and United States. And many other countries also have the kind of a public mode of deals. So the industries might consolidate to increase and defend the interest, promote their businesses. And the small business lacks lacks resources. They have no necessary fund to hire a competent lawyer about taxing regulation, and they would not have an expert as they employ to assess the EPA standard about environmental regulation, and they have to suffer from ignorance of law, and the law would not actually have some wise eyes to discern the situation, whether citation would be issued automatically, notwithstanding any mental state of the owner or any field officer in charge of that issue. And so the rule, which is difficult and complex, would cause some social injustice, and also the rules may not be adequate. For example, over-inclusive is one character. You see the famous argument raised by Colin Diker. He argues the rule should have three qualities: transparency, congruency, and simplicity. So that you also know the concept of communication. A rule might be an avenue to talk about the issue between the rulers and the regulated community, and small businesses, large businesses, and consumers, and the formed an enterprise responsible for the public safety and health of the workers. So how to write the rules is quite critical if you assume that law as a public agent. Yeah? So Diker illustrate broadcasting license, FCC, and the standard place very heavy reliance on whether the current holder can demonstrate record of service that is substantially attuned to meeting the needs of and interests of its area. So, repeated efforts to clarify and specify the meaning of terms like substantially needs and interest have failed. So not located in terms of etymology and a practical meaning of that term. This term is coherent implementation, perhaps. The rules remain directed, a paragon of administrable capacity. So transparency and simplicity, a complexity have not been ensured in a considerable number of cases. Typically, the concept transparency is very important. So we now have some intellectual focus about many national and global issues about this term. So industry is now improve on transparency of public administration. Typically, you might hypothesize a multinational corporations having many offices and their branches across global jurisdictions. They have been less clearly led to the laws and rules pursuant to their business operation. So the concept has been negotiated as a principle, and WTO has adopted the principle of transparency over a vast scope of a standing trade agreement. So you can see the commodity, a service area, and intellectual property. The protection of intellectual property has been crystallized into the TRIPS agreement. You can see that, and now we have a very effective system about this administration. WIPO is a peer institution. Nonetheless, WTO would be more effective to settle any conflicts or disputes arising from protection of intellectual property, since the dispute settlement mechanism has been comprehensive, and the WTO membership has been presumed on mandatory subscription to multinational treaty agreement. So there is no choice to deny the entrance into any treaty agreement. It is often compared with a quite slim exception to inaugurate into the multilateral treaty agreement. So TRIPS agreement may be contended uniformly, globally over the members of WTO. That was not feasible in current regime. WIPO, World Intellectual Property Organization. They have now managed the scope of the intellectual property agreement. Nonetheless, it just a product which deals with a substantial substances content of a protection standard and the content of rights. What is a industrial property patent right, and what is a right of trademark, for example, and how do we frame the right and obligations on the recent issue of intellectual property, a recording of music scores, others, and Rome Convention. Actually, they are reservoir to a red valve, and the standard was provided by that very international treaties from WIPO about the WTO operation. You see, TRIPS agreement has no provision about a substance and content of intellectual property rights. They merely cited the standard and borrowed the standard from WIPO scheme, and you see, nonetheless, WTO TRIPS has now make a profound effect. It's a comprehensive effect through perhaps one of 1,500 global states who are member states of the WTO. The membership has varied in WIPO scheme depending on a specific treaty. That is not a pattern you see in the WTO TRIPS organization. And also the critical flaws in WIPO treaties lie in lacking of a procedural requirement. Actually, no compulsory measure has been prescribed in respective treaties. That is not the situation we see in the TRIPS agreement. The procedural issue is quite consequential as you will consider both measure about pirate good products and counterfeiting. So actually, very efficient through the trade terms in the end to protect the intellectual property rights. So transparency. So consider in later these hours about the TRIPS procedural requirement. It actually creates a basic obligations about member states who are now obligated to provide a due institution. For example, judicial review is spelled out to protect the intellectual property rights. So the member states is mandated to respect the kind of universal commitment about the due procedure to prevent from piracy practice of piracies and violation of copyright laws, and infringement of a right trademark, kind of a right design. And software program also a new area we now intend to protect. So the years of legal protection, the kind of that is actually one important area in terms of public policy. So transparency is one important thing now. Along with governance, and the theme is quite controversial by many scholars in recent years. What is economic forum? Often annually convened, and also frontier the important agendas now we face with So you also are quite exposed to this concept, transparency. Yeah. So that is one important vintage point that the public policymakers and the ministers have kept in caution about his responsibility. And the term substantial needs and interest might have a good chance to disturb the whole idea in terms of transparency. And vagueness in rules can lead to bickering within an agency responsible for important public program or between the agency and its clients on regulated parties. Then what do we expect from a congruence? A law is congruent when it states what the law it implements intended, nothing more, nothing less. So the antithesis in practice would be found in such concepts, for example, over-inclusiveness and under-inclusiveness. These conditions occur when the rule includes persons, things, or activity that should not be included, or excludes those that should be included. And this term is also a popularly appears in Supreme Court opinion about the constitutional and public controversy, you see. And this perhaps misleading consequence from excessive volume of rules may be corrected by a judicial authority. So judicial review, as I've stated, is an important instrumentality for constitutional values, over-included, under-included. Well, these over-included to such an extent that the agency was open to ridicule for issuing standards that govern in excruciating detail the characteristics of safety devices and mandated, with no humor intended, portable toilets for cowboys. So OSHA has once prone to produce excessive volume of rules, and obviously it serves. Over-inclusive rules also have a corrosive effect on working relationship in the public sector and the posture of the private sector toward the program. So, the blizzard of safety standards issued by OSHA in the early 1970s